Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you all at Arrow's first Technology Summit. It's my pleasure to introduce you to some of the market intelligence capabilities that we've built over the years, and we're just extremely thrilled to share some information with you about what we can bring to the table. Again, I'm Tim Larkins, Director of Market Intelligence. Before we dive into the capabilities themselves, I wanted to give the experts on stage just a second to give a brief background on their work history and kind of an intro so you know who you're speaking with here today. So why don't we go ahead and start with Lloyd.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lloyd Mccoy. I manage the commercial arm of the market intelligence team. I've been with Arrow for about 6 years now, and prior to that, I served in the intelligence community as an intelligence officer and an analyst for about 8 years.
And Chris Wiedemann, I've been with the Arrow team here for coming up on 7.5 years. Wear a couple of hats. I lead, from a public sector standpoint, our civilian agency practice, and then I also cover hybrid cloud.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Maloney. I'm a manager on our DoD team for public sector, and then across commercial and public sector, I'm our data intelligence person, and I've been with Arrow for 4.5 years.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Eckert. I cover SLED as my day-to-day as well as IoT, and I've been with Arrow for about 3.5 years.
Thanks, everybody. And the gentleman that you see pictured on this slide who's not on stage right now is Tom O'Keefe. He is our advanced research consultant, and his technology area is Next Generation Data Center. Tom will be attending sessions this week, and he'll be a part of the partner roundtable conversations as well. So if you run into him, please get a chance to pick his brain. He's a very smart guy that you're going to want to get a chance to talk to about networking, infrastructure, all things data center. As for me, again, Tim Larkins, Director of Market Intelligence. So I come by way of Furman University for my bachelor's degree, received my MBA from Benedictine University, was in sales and business development for 8 years prior to coming to Immix Group about 7.5 years ago. Some of you may know Arrow acquired Immix Group to be their public sector arm about 4 years ago. And one of the reasons that Arrow purchased Immix Group was because of our market expertise, our market research capability, and 3 years ago, Arrow asked that we build a commercial market intelligence capability as well. So that's what our team's been focusing on, and I have to humbly say that I think we've built a world-class capability that no one else in the market can really offer to suppliers and partners. So with that, I guess the next obvious question is, what exactly does the market intelligence team do? So the role of market intelligence is really to understand what's driving the procurement of technology, and then leverage that knowledge to help you all, our suppliers and partners, shorten your sales cycles. I've got a team of 14 analysts whose role it is to every day scour end-user websites. So we're analyzing earnings reports, we're taking a look at 10Ks, we're constantly attending industry events. Of course, we're reading trade publications. And with that information from multiple disparate sources, we're drawing meaningful conclusions and then conducting primary research. So we're calling into the end users themselves so we can get a better understanding of what do your budgets look like for the year, how are you spending those budgets, how can a technology company be most effective when they're approaching you? And so with all of that information, again, we're creating sales-focused capabilities and deliverables that help internally to enable better decisions and also for you externally to drive your revenue. So the long and the short of it is we are an integrated part of the sales process that helps you to grow your revenue. And we do that through a series of sales-focused capabilities that I'll talk about in just a second, but I do want to highlight a couple of things that we do that might not be front and center every day, such as thought leadership. So we're regularly asked by well-respected publications like CRN, Bloomberg Business Week, IDG, Washington Technology to write articles on their behalf. And the reason that these companies are coming to us to provide content is because everybody on this stage is considered a well-respected expert in their space. So just one thing that we provide to the industry and that we're really proud of. Another capability we offer are custom briefings. So regularly we'll be asked to provide a sales training to a sales force or provide insights to an executive team to help them understand what's the best go-to-market strategy. How do I position a particular product within a vertical or a geography? So if you haven't taken advantage of our custom briefings in the past, please don't hesitate to engage with us. We're happy to talk to you a little bit about how we can help you with your product positioning as well. Now, one of the things that allows us to take on these thought leadership roles and allows us to focus on these custom briefings while simultaneously creating hundreds of sales campaigns are the internal data sources that help us to scale. And on the public sector side, we built a database that we call IMARC that houses tens of thousands of contracts, programs, tens of thousands of contacts that allow us to identify opportunities for our suppliers and partners. And on the commercial side, we've built a proprietary analytics platform that we call Insight. Now, Insight houses the massive amount of install-based data that Arrow has at its command to visualize it and identify buying patterns, spending patterns, and figure out where are the best opportunities for our partners and suppliers. So these are the resources that help us to scale. So the next big question, I guess, would be, what exactly do we do, and how do we engage with you? So using these data sources, we're able to provide missed opportunity and share of wallet campaigns. So helping you understand, when are you missing out on an opportunity, who are you missing out from? And how are your peers comparing to you in the market as well? How are your partners performing? If you're a supplier, which partners should you be working with? If you're a partner, who should you add to your line card? What technologies sell best during which parts of the year, in which geographies, right? In addition to that, our white space campaigns are second to none. Our suppliers and partners rave about our white space campaigns as well. So these are all resources that you can take advantage of working with the market intelligence team. And then the last big question, I guess, then is, why would you want to engage with the team? And I hope that this slide can answer any of those kinds of questions. When we compare year-over-year metrics here from the first half of 2017 to the first half of 2018, you can see that we've increased our number of campaigns by 120%. And from those campaigns, we've driven over $150 million in new revenue. I think it's a pretty compelling number. And what I really would like everybody to focus on here is that if you engage with the team, on average, a campaign in the commercial space is going to net a $1.35 million deal. So again, a very compelling statistic here that I like to tout, and we couldn't do it without the experts here on this stage. So if you're interested in engaging with the team, of course, don't hesitate to reach out to Lloyd. I'm always a resource as well, but I'll give you a second just to take a look at their contact information. And again, shoot us an email, give us a phone call, and we're happy to talk to you a little bit about what we do. See a couple phones out taking some pictures. Okay, we're good. And now we'll go ahead and move forward with the experts on stage. So I've asked everybody here to prepare about 5 minutes of content around their respective technology areas of expertise, to give you sort of a high-level taste of what you can expect when you're talking to someone from my team. So why don't we go ahead and start with Lloyd talking about security.
All right, hello everyone. So the big challenge for me is distilling any discussion on security in just a few minutes, but I'll just limit the scope of my discussion to just a few of the most noteworthy trends. And I'll start with the cloud platform story, where we are seeing this newfound love of security partnerships, mergers and acquisitions, frankly, on a scale not seen before. Before, we saw partnerships between 1 to 2 companies. Now we're seeing 10 to 12 companies. And there's good reason for it. You go to the AWS website 2 years ago, and there was a little security section there. Now, fast forward to today, there are 20 plus things there. Cloud directory, SIEM, key management as a service, et cetera. And so security vendors are understandably nervous of the big hyperscale CSPs offering their own inherent security offerings. And so they've chosen to compete by becoming part of a critical ecosystem. And so it's important to partner early and often with the big CSPs, because you don't want to be on the outside looking in when they decide on who's in and who's out. They're not going to want to alienate half of their customer base by eliminating security product A, but if you're not part of that marketplace, and then lopping you off will be easy. So being part of that presence, being part of that ecosystem is important. Another area of opportunity within this paradigm is obviously offering solutions that the CSPs aren't. So I'm thinking of multi-cloud solutions. For example, a DLP tool that cuts across all 4 CSPs. You have to go outside of the CSP to get that. The one caveat to this, though, is that although this is an area of opportunity, everyone else is getting in on multi-cloud, MSPs, VARs, the security vendors themselves. So there's going to be stiff competition there. Related to all of this is the fact that everyone is moving towards a services model. And product manufacturers are increasingly going to be doing the same thing. We're going to see more and more services wrapped around security products offered by the large security vendors for their largest customers. And those who don't have the same breadth of offerings and services could get pushed downstream to the mid-market and lower. So the cloud ecosystem is 1. 2, data security and compliance. So clearly a big issue here is GDPR. Demand's going to be high for maintaining certain data standards, understanding where data resides, understanding how to extract the data, how to delete the data, investigations, DLP, encryption, the whole gamut. Also, workflow tools to help manage that whole process is going to be hugely important. As we decentralize, as we move from the centralized core data center to the cloud, to the employee, now data is everywhere. That employee or sensor has data, the cloud has data, the centralized data center has data. And so with data all over the place, now we're trying to recombine it in a way so that we can say with confidence that we have control of that data and can delete it or find it when we need it. So again, DLP tools and such are going to be hugely important. The last driver is identity, because we're seeing this convergence of our digital and physical selves. And it's creating a lot of, why didn't I think of that moments with respect to how we think of identity. As our digital and physical personas coalesce and merge, we're going to see continued adoption of different forms of biometrics, such as detection patterns based off of speech, gestures, stress, distress, and the like. Can't talk about identity without also mentioning blockchain identity. So that market has been around for several years now. We've seen some acceleration as there's this race to become part of an ecosystem of identities, because companies realize that controlling that network, controlling that pipeline of identities will position them to serve as the backbone for the consumer and government services that come calling. There's going to be continued acceleration in that market for the next few years. And then after that, it's probably going to be too late for new entrants. But still, opportunities will abound outside of blockchain identity within the identity space, especially around continuous authentication and identity management in hybrid environments. So to recap, cloud ecosystem, data security and compliance, and identity are some of the top of mind issues as it relates to security.
Okay, so Lloyd, I took a couple notes while you were chatting there. So thanks for recapping that. I think cloud security certainly comes through. Data security is obviously going to be ever important in identity and access management. I wonder, for our suppliers and partners in the audience, are there any particular verticals that you think these tools will be most needed in the coming year?
Yeah. So for the cloud ecosystem, for that driver, I don't really see it as vertical specific. It's more vertical agnostic, transcends all verticals. But certainly for identity and data security and compliance, the easy answer, and I think the right answer is, when it comes to mind, are your financial related verticals, because they have heavy audit, compliance, regulatory requirements that come with that. But also, I would also add your manufacturing / industry or energy industries, as they increasingly come online, with IoT and industrial IoT, then in tandem with that will come the requirements for data security and compliance and identity.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you. So let's move on to Chris and talk a little bit about cloud.
Sure. So I'm glad that Lloyd began his security conversation with the cloud platform the way that he did, because the trends that we're seeing there, just from a security standpoint, dovetail pretty nicely with some kind of larger movements in the cloud market that we're tracking. And those are specifically around consolidation in a number of different forms. So we're all analysts. We like numbers. I want to give you guys a couple of numbers for context here. According to IDC, the United States public sector cloud market is projected to hit about $160 billion in revenue in 2021. And that breaks out as roughly $100 billion in SaaS, software as a service, and then about $30 million split up evenly between the infrastructure and platform delivery models, give or take a couple billion here or there as a rounding error. When you dig one layer deeper, what you see, especially in the infrastructure and platform markets, is that over 50% of that revenue is slated to be captured by 4 companies: Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, and Google. And looking over at the SaaS side, at least on the surface, it appears that there's a little bit more competitive diversity there. You don't see the same 4 companies capturing the majority of that projected SaaS revenue. But that's really just because of how wide an umbrella software as a service is, right? So when you narrow it down into specific categories, again, we see some pretty clear market leaders emerging. Think of the success, for example, that Salesforce has had in their CRM practice. It's something similar being repeated across multiple SaaS lines. So there's consolidation just in terms of who the market leaders are, but you'll notice that across deployment models, and again, I'm thinking of infrastructure and platform here, it's the same for companies. And we're seeing consolidation in terms of what the offerings are. Increasingly, infrastructure and platform as a service as kind of hard and fast distinctions is a concept that's going to go away. Now, Lloyd also mentioned partnerships. That's something that we're seeing with some of the major SaaS vendors or SaaS CSPs getting their partnerships out of the way early with the hyperscale providers on the infrastructure and platform side. And it's creating an environment where, in some ways, some of those hyperscale suppliers, hyperscale CSPs, are effectively elbowing in on markets that traditionally would have been the purview of us, right? The ISVs and the VARs in the room here. And so the question that always kind of naturally arises there is, what do we do? How do we continue to stay relevant and compete in that landscape? And at the risk of sounding a little bit trite, it boils down to specializing and complementing. So what do I mean by that? Now, in terms of specialization, the good news here is that as the market in cloud tends to move again towards the hyperscale CSPs, we're in an environment where those companies cannot be experts in all things. They cannot be all things to all people. And so a lot of the traditional value that a VAR, for example, would bring to the market is still relevant here. You guys know your customers. You know the industries that you work with. You know the players there. Whatever your specialization is going to remain relevant. If anything, it becomes more relevant in a world where the simple majority of the business is being done by a small handful of companies. So what you're going to want to do there is specialize not just in terms of partnership with those hyperscale CSPs, but also with your customers, acting more as kind of trusted advisors, helping them with your knowledge of their space to navigate the migration into cloud. And then complement. So again, as we move towards a handful of hyperscale CSPs, there will pretty much by definition be capability gaps here. There will be areas where those large companies cannot meet the unique needs of your customers in their space. Now, this is going to be more true in some verticals than others. So I'm thinking here of the highly regulated industries in particular. Lloyd mentioned, finance. You can lump healthcare, energy, really anything public sector related into that as well. But there will always be places where the large market leaders cannot properly meet the needs of your customers, and that's really the role that we're going to continue to play here. So look for opportunities to partner early on, but also just keep in mind that there's a value that we bring even in the cloud space, even in the face of this market consolidation.
So Chris, you mentioned that we're looking at about within the next 3 years, $160 billion market for cloud. Is that North America or is that global?
That's just the US.
Just the US, wow, okay. So with so much of that owned by the major hyperscalers, obviously, like you said, we're going to have to create complementary solutions. We're going to have to develop our own niche in specific markets. Are there any types of specific services that the folks in the audience should be aware of that they should come to market with right off the bat before more consolidation takes over and the hyperscalers continue to elbow their way into different markets?
Sure. So it's difficult to get too specific here because a lot of those services are going to vary by vertical or even by geographic region. But I would say that the through line between all of it, and this is something that I kind of alluded to already, is going to be acting more as that trusted advisor. So leveraging the expertise that you've built up over the years with your customer base and bringing that to them, helping them understand both that you know their business and that you can help them move towards the cloud.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Chris, for the time. Steph, let's move to you and talk about data intelligence.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm going to steal Chris's piece about trusted advisors because I think that applies really nicely to data analytics or data intelligence technologies as well. When you look at these types of technologies, things like predictive analytics, machine learning, people get very excited about the promise of these technologies. But in reality, most companies are not truly doing this in a way that's at least that's getting them results across their entire enterprise. There's pockets where it's happening, sure, but most companies still need a lot of help from us. So it's really all about understanding where your customer's at from a technology maturity perspective. You need to sell them these types of capabilities in a very iterative fashion. People are also very quick to abandon analytics projects if they aren't quickly successful. Someone's going to try to do a specific project. They're not going to get results. They're going to get frustrated, and someone else is going to try to take it on in 6 months. But if you can come in as that trusted partner, help your customer put together a solution that's going to help exactly fit their needs, help them get results, then your best way to grow your business is to do it incrementally from there, success by success. So in terms of what the actual market looks like in the data intelligence world, overall, it is still very much a growing market. It's great opportunity for us. There are some pieces that are going faster than others. If you look at just like business intelligence, databases, visualization, and dashboards, things like that, the market is still growing, but probably only at about 5% CAGR for the next couple years. It has slowed down a little bit. Just in a lot of that, I think, is due to competition in the marketplace. So how do you help your solution stand out in that crowded marketplace? Well, I think we all know there's a big shortage of data scientists out there or advanced data type workers. So it's really all about augmented analytics, which is putting more advanced analytics capabilities in the hands of the average user. So someone like me comes in, it's probably about adding data science capabilities to an existing tool like a visualization dashboard, helping someone easily cluster their customers, maybe even starting to get to the beginning of predictive analytics with things like linear regression to help them work with their data. Then predictive analytics would kind of be the next step of that. And that is an area that's growing a lot faster at about 10% CAGR for the next few years. But again, that's something that you would need to sell incrementally to a customer that's ready for it. Don't try to sell it before they're ready. You have to crawl before you can walk, that kind of idea. And then, of course, we can't talk about data intelligence tools without mentioning machine learning, and that's probably the fastest growing area of all. Again, remember in the beginning I said not everyone's doing this yet, so that's where the biggest opportunity lies, but it's all going to be about helping our customers get ready for machine learning. Help them with their problems today, know that that's what is out there, that's what's going to happen in the future, and help them lay the groundwork to be successful there. And machine learning tools are growing at about an 11% CAGR. When you start to fold in things like machine learning services, you're going to see even higher numbers, as high as 30%, maybe even higher, according to some projections. But again, overall, these types of technologies, just remember, they're very iterative. A lot of people talk about these technologies. Few are doing them in a truly successful enterprise-wide way. So it's going to be our job to help lay the groundwork for that and help them get there quickly.
I think taking advantage of the citizen scientist is something that's extremely important in this industry. I know from my own challenges, hiring people for analytics is not easy. So I'm thankful to have somebody like Stephanie who has a mind for this type of thing, that she can take on these types of tasks and really run with it and sort of build an analytics platform. So a couple notes here. Obviously, we need to understand our end users and where they are from a technology maturation perspective. We need to recognize, who our complementary suppliers are, so we can create sort of a frenemy situation or just develop co-opetition in the space. Varying growth rates between certain types of technologies, somewhere between 5% and 30%, depending on which technology we're talking about. I guess the relevant question for me then is which types of products should we be bundling together as a solution? When we're talking about co-opetition, which types of suppliers should be working with which types of suppliers, or as a partner, who should you be bringing to an end user?
Yeah, sure. So even just looking within data analytics or data intelligence tools that complement each other, a lot of the time a data quality tool is something, again, it kind of goes back to understanding your customer and what they want to do, but that's like laying the foundation and groundwork. A lot of people don't always consider that and the time it takes. But then looking kind of outside of just data intelligence, Lloyd mentioned data is everywhere. So sometimes it can be about understanding what other kinds of challenges your customers are having with their data, because maybe if they're having a storage problem, it indicates an analytics pain point. And it ties into all the technology. So bringing together a holistic solution for your customers is what you want.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks. We're going to Rachel last because IoT we find isn't necessarily a discrete type of technology category. It's more of a wrapper that exists around all of the other types of technology categories. So I'm happy to have Rachel kind of pull up the rear here.
All right, so as most of you know, IoT is really one of the most influential technology forces in the market. And spending in the US is growing every year, and by 2021, spending will be approaching $300 billion, according to many projections, with an expected CAGR of about 13%. And we'll see manufacturing and transportation be the largest drivers of that spending. But what I really see holding it back is really a lack of market standardization. There are a few standards out there when you get to technology, platforms, services, even security, which may make some buyers a little bit hesitant to jump into the market. When you look at kind of the vendor community, those lack of standards is making it difficult for them to carry wins from customer to customer, leading to some stalled market growth for many. We have also not seen clear technology leaders emerge. In years past, we saw connectivity and hardware vendors dominate the market, whereas now we're seeing software and analytics vendors rise to the top, and that's really where we see the most opportunity. And you also need to make sure that those vendors and those SIs are able to kind of fold in there and see some of those big wins that they've been struggling to see. So on the flip side, we do see a lot of IoT creating some business transformation. IoT is not a singular technology, but a marriage of many, including cloud, cyber, analytics, that are really helping drive this business transformation through benefits like improved productivity, reduced operating expenses, or even improved customer experience, which is really helping to drive the overall market adoption from some buyers. Behind this transformation is going to be analytics. Harnessing all of the data that those sensors are collecting, managing it, harnessing its intelligence, and then translating that can be one of the big challenges when it comes to an IoT implementation. That's where we see the use of cloud-based IoT platforms come in that can kind of help enable those organizations to access and process and deliver all of that data in consumable formats to the right stakeholders. And let's not forget security. Security is going to be part and parcel to the successful implementation of any IoT project. These devices are often placed in unsecured areas for long periods of time, so the security of the device and the data it transmits is going to be part and parcel of any successful implementation. So while business transformation is kind of the ultimate goal, what we see working really well right now are going to be use case specific implementations. And vendors are starting to notice. They're tailoring their solutions to market-specific verticals like banking, transportation, or retail, tailoring their pre-established platforms and applications, and then customizing those for each individual customer's needs. Somebody in retail and healthcare are going to have different data needs, but they may start with the same base and sensor and cameras. And one of the most important pieces is going to be careful planning and implementation strategy. You need to make sure that those organizations are kind of capturing that ROI, because it can be arguably one of the most important pieces of the strategy. They need to be looking for that initial ROI within the first 12 months, especially from a financial perspective, because without that initial ROI, it can be very difficult to justify additional implementations or even an enterprise-wide deployment. But the market is ripe with opportunities to seize. Buyers are out there looking for those end-to-end solutions. With the market still developing and a real lack of standards, they're really looking for kind of a plug-and-play end-to-end solution that can help reduce some of the complexities that comes with IoT. And then let's not forget the long-term implications of the technology. You need to make sure that you're advising those buyers and organizations how the ever-changing technology out there is going to be folded into their long-term strategy and approach. And as a kind of a closing note, there needs to be a balance between the use case specific implementations that we see now and the enterprise-wide deployments where we see the market headed. Whereas right now they're going to be looking at transportation or healthcare. In the long term, those need to be folded into larger infrastructures and networks, and so flexibility and interoperability are going to be really key.
Those are certainly terms that we hear reiterated not just in public sector but in commercial all over, flexibility, interoperability. So as we all know, IoT is just rife with opportunity. We're looking at a $1.4 trillion market globally in the next 3 years. Rachel, you mentioned in the U.S. rather, $300 billion by 2021. So huge market there. Enormous challenges with standardization. Again, that's something that we've definitely seen within government. I do think that our public sector leaders are going to try to take a leadership approach here. I've heard talk of establishing an entire agency, maybe one that will mirror the Space Force, I don't know, but an agency that will cover standardization practices for IoT implementation. I've got kind of a two-part question for you. I've heard that there are just as many IoT platform providers as there are sensor and gateway providers, right? So when I look at that, I think with the hyperscalers in the market and cloud, there's going to have to be some kind of consolidation over time. Do you think that there will be consolidation? And if so, what types of solutions can we bring to the table to make sure that we're not going to be elbowed out of the market by the time the Googles and the GEs and the Facebooks come into play?
So the short answer to the first question is yes, and we're already seeing some of that consolidation through acquisition. And that's just really going to continue. It's going to pick up some steam. You're going to see a lot of those platforms consolidate into kind of maybe 3 or 4 of the top platforms. And if once that happens, I really see this as a kind of a plug and play model where you can kind of take that IoT implementation and just kind of plug it in for the buyer. They're really short on staff. They don't have the staff necessary to install the sensors, the gateways, the networks, manage the data. So if you put that into one sort of bundled solution, then that's really going to help them and kind of maybe convert them from maybe hesitant to jumping into the market. And that's kind of where I see us playing in and the vendors and the partners coming together as toward an IoT ecosystem to kind of do that for them.
So a similar response to Chris's, the hyperscalers can't be all things to all people. We have to be comfortable with peer-to-peer relationships. We have to be comfortable with co-opetition is kind of what I'm hearing. It's sort of a similar theme throughout all of the experts here. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time here. Thank you for your attention. Again, we look forward to working with our suppliers and partners. You are the lifeblood of our business, and we're here to help you drive your revenue. So please engage with us, and we look forward to speaking with you the rest of the week.